Next is Wayne Dunn, class of 1997. He is the founder and president and CEO of Clark Sustainable Resource Developments. The Clark, he didn't take his name, but the Clark comes from the fact that one of his partners is the former Prime Minister of Canada. His venture involves the harvesting of mahogany, ebony, and other incredibly valuable hardwoods rooted below the water in an 8,600 square kilometers man-made lake in Ghana. It's the world's largest underwater logging operation, and he's doing this with 3 other Sloan alums from different classes. Wayne's married to Gifty, who was born in Ghana, and they live in British Columbia. He is a public-private sector entrepreneur specializing in social responsibility and environmental sustainability. He's worked on more than 50 social responsibility projects in over 30 countries throughout Africa and around the world. His first international work was in 1994, where he led a 5-country mission helping the United States Development Program, the United Nations Development Program, to explore indigenous economic development alternatives in Central and South America. He directed reform initiatives in Canada, Africa, Latin America, Europe, and Asia, and received the very prestigious World Bank Development Innovation Award. And he has recently participated in the development of a case study for the Graduate School of Business on one of his African projects. His clients are wide-ranging. He has managed international events on indigenous business, trade, and corporate social responsibility at the Organization of American States, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the United Nations. He grew up in a logging family. His life experience also includes piling lumber, driving trucks, fishing, and trapping. His youth was spent, I suspect, as he will tell you, on the grunt end of a chainsaw. He is the only Sloan graduate who is accepted into the program even without a high school graduation, a diploma. But he is probably the only Sloan Fellow who read the Encyclopedia Britannica by the age of 10. He also had a high GMAT. His colleagues in his class describe him as a dreamer and the emotional leader of his class, and I'm very pleased to have Wayne Dunn with us.
Thanks, John. My name is Wayne, and I'm an alcoholic. Whoops, wrong meeting. Seriously, you know, it's 10 years out from our class of 97, which was and is the best class ever. And I've been threatened by one of them. If there's any consultant speak, they're throwing tomatoes at me. So, I still often think I was the admissions mistake, and I thank Hal for the risk and allowing me in, and Kirk for not throwing me out once he found out about me. I had a chance to chat with John yesterday because I had no idea what I wanted to say, and he said, you know, what I'd like you to do is talk about how you go from growing up in the bush in northern Saskatchewan and not finishing high school and no undergrad to raising money on Wall Street from Goldman and Barclays and making the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And, you know, I think there's two answers to how you do that. The first is you have to be incredibly lucky. You have to have amazing mentors and people in your life. And I've been so fortunate in that. And I look out here and I see many of them, you know, including Michael Bush from the class of 94 and Niall Amley Wolf from the class of 2007, who are Sloans that I have the great fortune to work with in this venture. The other thing I think you need is, you know, I don't know about that GMAT score thing, but you have to not be smart enough to know that you can't do things, because I remember quite vividly in 1994, I was dating a girl from New York, and And I told her that I decided I wanted to go to business school and get an MBA. And she said, "That's great. Where are you going to do your undergrad?" And I said, "I'm not. And I'm either going to go to Harvard or Stanford." She said, "You've got grade 11. You've got no undergrad. There's no way. You can't, be serious." I said, No, that's what I'm going to do. And I think if there's one thing, I was fortunate enough, you asked me to talk about DNA. I grew up in the bush, northern Saskatchewan. One of the ways to visualize it is when I was growing up, there was one farm north of our house, and then it was bush and tundra all the way to the North Pole. The furthest north, east-west road was just south of my house. We didn't have a lot of experts to go to. I mean, you looked around and, if you had a problem, you better figure out how to solve it. And you better figure out how to solve it in a way that wasn't going to piss your neighbors off, because you had to live with them. And, so I learned that. I learned that. I was fortunate. My father, who didn't get as far as me, only has grade 7, but who's an amazing entrepreneur and just, my first and best mentor, and that, he taught me the value of hard work and really trying to work in a way where you're part of the community and where you're not stepping on people or living life as not a zero-sum game. And that's a lesson that's been part of my journey. And all of these things, I don't know. How do we know how we come together? How do any of us know how we come to be sitting here? We're all a product of our parents, of how we grew up, of how we adapted to situations, of people who come into our lives. I want to talk, I don't know how much time I have left. I don't have a watch, but maybe for another 6 or 7 minutes and just talk about some of the things that are part of my life experience and life history. And, this place, this institution has been such a defining part of it. I came here feeling so fortunate to have been able to come here and have the opportunity to, live and learn and play with such great people and learn from such great professors and be part of such a fabulous program and a fabulous institution. And every day I just, Michael Bush and I were walking on campus yesterday and just talking about how privileged we all are, every one of us, that we can be here associated with this institution and all the greatness here. For me, I grew up, I quit school after grade 11, went to work in the bush, as John said, on the grunt end of a chainsaw, and worked here and there and did things. And I think I had my last job when I was about 21 or 22, and then I don't know if it was a decision, but somehow I figured out that in my life, it sounds really profound now, it wasn't, but I wasn't really disciplined. I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I knew if I was going to be able to do what I wanted to do, I had to figure out a way to get somebody to pay me for doing what I wanted to do, because otherwise I didn't know economics, but that one seemed pretty simple. So it's all been sort of about things like that. I remember in the early 80s, I was in my hometown, Big River, Saskatchewan, and the high school there likes to say that, we got to be the best high school in the world because all you need is a grade 11 from Big River to get admitted to the Stanford Business School. Anyway, I decided, a couple of guys from here started a company called Apple, and there was an Apple II Plus, and I really wanted to get an Apple II Plus. I couldn't afford one. There was a trucking company that was headquartered in Big River, and they were hauling general freight, and they had about 300 accounts receivable customers. I didn't know what accounts receivable was, but I knew they had to do a lot of manual bookkeeping, and I'd read about computers, and I thought there's got to be a way that I can use this to get myself a computer. So I went and I convinced the owner of that company that he should give me a contract to do his accounts receivable and his general ledger and set it up on computer. And somehow he never thought to ask me if I knew anything about accounting. Sort of like Hal, when I told Hal, got to tell you, I don't have an undergrad. He didn't ask me if I finished high school. And, you know, like I said, I wasn't smart enough to know what I couldn't do. So I convinced him of that. I used that to borrow some money from the bank. I went and bought an Apple II Plus and an extra disk drive and a printer and an accounting program, and I got their stuff, and I sort of locked myself away for about a week, and I'd enter everything and run it, and it didn't work, and I'd do it again. And at the end of it, I sort of figured it out and you know, learned that, and you know, and I could go online. I created some very interesting and exciting opportunities. This was back in the early 80s when there was a fundamental change with computers. There was some exciting vertical markets opened up. I was going great guns until some business realities hit and I went bankrupt. Anyway, another learning, but it, you know, I just sort of kept going, stumbled a lot of times in my life, but fortunately, you know, I just always somehow managed to have the people around me that gave me the courage and the strength to get up and stand up and go again. And not sure, next part I'll pick up. I decided that for some reason, not sure why, I wanted to work in Indigenous development, working with Indigenous peoples in Canada on business and economic development, and found a way to get started on that. You know, another story similar to the computer and accounting, but anyway, worked on that for a while. Started in Saskatchewan, ended up working around Canada, different places, and had some pretty exciting projects. Again, had a couple of mentors that were just fantastic, people that knew their stuff. We shared similar values and approaches and really took time to help me learn and to help me grow. And in 1994, I was asked to present at a conference in Belize on some of my work in Canada, helping Indigenous tribes partner with mainstream businesses and provide goods and services to mining and oil and gas and other ventures. And I talked about that, and there's a guy there from the United Nations Development Program who had been tasked with developing a program for the world's decade of Indigenous peoples, a program for the UNDP, and he asked me if I'd be interested in helping. And again, I didn't know enough to say no, and so he said, well, put something together. So I went and I sort of sucked out of my thumb this idea of that Indigenous peoples in Central and South America could partner on business initiatives with Indigenous peoples in Canada, and managed to sell that idea at the UNDP to get started, and worked you know, for 3 or 4 years prior to the Sloan program in that, and just was fortunate enough to have some amazing experiences. I traveled in South America with the Prime Minister of Canada on a trade mission. You know, you can imagine there I was, a grade 11 dropout, working with you know, tribes on business and all of these other business leaders. I felt about as out of place as I feel here. Worked with the President of the World Council of Indigenous Peoples and had the great fortune to travel in the Amazon and the Andes and throughout the Americas with him and get a chance to really see other cultures and other peoples. Was adopted into a tribe in the Amazon of Peru, the Shipibo tribe, which is something I'm very proud of, and I maintain connections there. But it was through this work, and I was working with the United Nations, the World Bank, and other institutions, I realized I wanted the learning of attending a business school, But I also realized the credential was really important. And the universe sort of, I really believe once you set your mind to something, just take that first step and things somehow work out. You may not get to where you thought you were going, but you'll get to where you need to be. And so I started, I came here, and it was an absolutely transforming year. I went, these amazing highs and these lows. I don't know if any of you remember your first study group. I walked in, I knew nothing about studying or anything, never done that. We'd come and we got these assignments. There was reading assignments and everything. Okay, and I went and did something. A study group met at 5, and I remember some of my classmates are here that were in it. There's Teresa Elder, who, by 5 o'clock, she had the year planned in 15-minute segments. And she read everything, she knew everything, and there's Jonathan, who just knew everything, whether he'd read it or not. And Francesco, who isn't here, but it was, another just brilliant guy. And I remember just going in there and, oh my God, what am I doing here? But we had the great fortune of just having a class that really came together. We, as Teresa pointed out, have the best attendance here, had the best attendance at the last reunion I was at, and will at the next too. Coming out of the Sloan program, one of the things I learned was that I was very bad at politics. And working with Indigenous peoples, there's a lot of politics involved. I still believed that the space where business, environment, and community meet, that there was a lot of value to be developed in that space, and it was a really interesting space to work in, and that it would feel good to work there. So I left here deciding that I wanted to work in that space, and fortunately one of my classmates, Ellis Armstrong, was over there somewhere, took a risk, and he was running BP's operations in Venezuela and asked me if I'd come down and help him think about how he could work more effectively with Indigenous peoples in Venezuela. And and that was great. It gave me some cash flow, which I really needed, because I don't know who talked about self-sponsored Sloan starting 5 years ago. They started 10. And I was really broke and did that project, and having that credential, worked for BP, helped to get additional work, so I started to develop a small practice helping businesses to really address non-market issues in various places around the world, and had the great fortune to work with a company called Placer Dome of Canada. We're the first major international mining investment to go into South Africa post-apartheid, and help Placer develop and implement some programs and projects there that won a number of awards from the World Bank and other institutions, and that were actually developed into a case study here at the business school. But I'd always believed that you could have your cake and eat it too. And in my case, my cake was I wanted to drive profitability. And at the same time, I wanted to drive environmental and social change. And that may seem like an impossibility. Even Jeff Moore's solver ants might not be able to solve that one. But I really think we're doing it with our latest venture. I've worked on many projects around the world and with different companies. I think the venture we have now is actually doing that. We've developed a new concept, a concept that's been funded by the likes of Goldman and Barclays. It's been covered in some interesting places. But it's also driving social and environmental change. Every tree that we harvest leaves timber standing and continuing to absorb carbon. Our output will have the best environmental footprint of any harvesting of standing timber anywhere in the world, anytime, ever. And so far, our investors, who include 5 of my classmates, seem pretty happy. There hasn't been an investor revolt against the company anyway. I really believe that going forward, we're entering into a discontinuity, and the marketplace, through regulatory change and through consumer and other preferences, is becoming more willing to pay for environmental and social goods. I believe that the business has traditionally been very good at sort of taking those gazintus, what goes in that is measured in financial terms, in dollar and cents terms, and optimizing that in terms of the outputs. There's another whole set of inputs, natural capital or environmental inputs, that have been mispriced for various reasons. And they're becoming right-priced. As we speak every day, every week, every month, they're becoming more right-priced. And I believe that opens up some real business opportunities, that businesses that can figure out how to connect profitability, shareholder returns, and environment are going to have huge opportunities. And that's where our company is going. And the only reason I'm getting a chance to do that and work with such great people is because the Sloan program and the legacy that all of you have created and been part of. Thank you.